All right. It's May 13th. May 13th, 2020. This is the Voice of San Diego at home. That's it. That's the day. Coming at you live from my kitchen in Ocean Beach. It's Scott Lewis, the CEO at Voice of San Diego. Thanks for joining me again. I have a great show planned. I'm excited about this one. It is Dissonance Day at the Voice of San Diego at home. Dissonance Day. Need to look that up. It's okay. I looked it up this morning. Dissonance Day. There are so many competing signals and messages coming at us from all different angles, and we're going to go through a few of them. What a moment in history this is, and I'm excited. Also, we are going to also have Laura Kohn join us. She is the director of early workforce development at the Workforce Partnership, at the San Diego Workforce Partnership. And she and I have been talking for years together about schools and about childcare, and never have those topics been more important than now. We have so much to discuss. But first, let's go through some of today's dissonance. I couldn't help but notice this in the newspaper today. Cal State will keep classes online in the fall. This is California State University system, which includes, of course, San Diego State. Okay, understand. Fall classes going to be online. The decision comes as schools grapple throughout the country with how to keep campuses closed amid the coronavirus crisis. Okay, understand that. It says, though, later in the piece, the chancellor said that small number of classes where in-person instruction is indispensable and can be justified, such as clinical nursing, biology labs, or merchant marine training. Who knew? Merchant marine training. Sufficient resources and protocols will have to be in place to ensure the health and safety of students and teachers. All right. I got that. Understood that story. I got it. I hear what you're talking about. Everything's closed except for the merchant marine training and a few other indispensable things. But then I turn over to the sports section, and they've got this discussion about how this affects sports at San Diego State. And the athletic director says, I don't know that it necessarily affects us at all. Yeah, why would that happen? Why would shutting down the campus affect the sports? I don't know. We knew that there were going to be that we were going to be in some form of virtual classes this fall anyway. They're definitely still going to have classes on campus, like the merchant marines. We assume that everything doesn't just fall off the end of the earth and get really, really bad. There are going to be some classes like art, dance, and graduate classes that you have to have in person. So he thinks he's going to bring student athletes back to campus July 7th. I don't understand what's happening in this world. I don't understand. There's so many competing messages all the time. You look at the country right now. I tweeted earlier this morning that it seems like the news yesterday that LA County was going to extend its stay-at-home situation for 3 months was more news about how nobody knows what stay-at-home means than it was news about LA County extending anything for 3 months. You have this weird situation right now where we have blue states who say, basically, we are closed, we have stay-at-home orders with X through Z number of exceptions. You can do this. You can go to the beach. You can go surf. You can go to Best Buy and pick up your selfie cameras. You can go to the store now and pick up anything you want. You can go get your surfboard, everything, but you can't go into you have this whole list of things you can do. And then you have a bunch of red states that are saying we're open, except here's a bunch of things you can't do. So they're almost exactly the same experience, except that they've just branded it differently. It's a fascinating moment in American history. So we're going to try to handle some of that. Also, want to talk about San Diego State University and its effort to purchase land in Mission Valley. You might have remembered just yesterday, when we were talking about San Diego State University's purchase of Mission Valley Stadium land, that they were waiting. They had a purchase and sale agreement that they put together The city wants to get the deal done by July, which means that if you do the scheduling backward from July, they've got to get it on the docket for the city council May 19th. And if you go back from there, you need to get it on the docket today. And the docket came out today. And guess what's not on it? The purchase and sale agreement of sending San Diego State the deed to the land in Mission Valley. Not on the docket. Not on the docket. So you have the city saying, we've got to get this sold by July because we A, need the money, and B, need the money, and C, need the money, and D, we don't want to spend the money to maintain and operate Qualcomm Stadium after July 1st. $1 million a month. So you have the city experiencing an economic catastrophe unlike anything we've ever seen in our lives. And they're freaked out. They want to get this deal done by July. So they do the math backwards, say, we've got to get on the docket May 19th. I call yesterday, Georgette Gomez, the council president. I get a statement back from her saying, we're working on it. It's not on the docket yet, but we'll get it done as soon as possible. We're working on it. We'll get it done as soon as possible. Okay. All right. We'll see what happens with that. A lot of people bring up, is Mara Elliott, the city attorney, trying to kill this? Well, look, here's the situation. San Diego State has one group of people. The CSU system and San Diego State, they're in lockstep. They are together. If they have any arguments, they are not showing them. And there's no elected officials in the San Diego State, California State University system. Yeah, there's some trustees or whatever. The point is, there are no actual elected officials running it. The city of San Diego, though, on the other hand, has, the city attorney is an elected official. The mayor is an elected official. He negotiated it. City attorney is an elected official on her own, and she is now reviewing that negotiation. And then the city council is reviewing all of their work. Why am I yelling, Scott? Was I yelling? Sorry. I am fired up these days. I don't know. Why am I yelling? So San Diego State and the city, San Diego State is really, in a way, like kind of playing the city's different elected officials off each other. Now, the question is, when you buy a house, you get like 1,000 pieces of paper that say, hey, you might be ruined financially in 30 years if this doesn't work out very well. Something similar is happening in San Diego City Hall right now, where the city attorney is handing them a bunch of documents saying, hey, this might be bad for X and Y reasons. Here's one of the reasons. San Diego expects to get 30% of its water from recycling sewage in the next couple of decades. That's right. We're taking the bad stuff. We're going to clean it up and we're going to put it back in the system. And we may need to build a facility to do that on San Diego State's land if they buy this land in the river park that they're building. Hey, don't mind the sewage facility right there. We just need to do that for a while to pump some things and then we'll be done. And so San Diego State, they want to make sure that San Diego State makes room for them. San Diego State says, we made this room for you. It's fine. It's fine. And the mayor or the city attorney is like, I don't know if it's been clearly enough spelled out. We don't want in 10 years when we're building this facility for San Diego State to say you can't build it there and let's fight in court. That kind of thing is what they're fighting about right now. They're not fighting about how much it costs. They're not fighting about, what they're going to build. San Diego State's already prepared, or it has not already borrowed $660 million to prepare the land and build the stadium. They're ready to go. Fascinating moment in San Diego politics. Bring your questions. We're going to bring some people online. I would like to see your questions and talk. Obviously, I have been extremely concerned about schools. What are we doing if we don't open schools? You can talk about your spas all you want. You can talk about restaurants. I love restaurants. I love sushi places. I love dim sum. I love it at all. I love it. But you know what I like more? Special education, English language learning, schools, summer camps, computer literacy. How do we have a society without schools? And nobody's grappling with, we have all these places talking about reopening and nobody's dealing with the fact that we don't have any schools open. That's one thing that's consistent across this. We talk about stay-at-home orders. Well, there's no open schools in Georgia right now. Nobody's figured out the school issue. We've got to figure out schools. We've got to figure out childcare. And to do that, I'm going to bring in my friend, Laura Kohn. Laura, hello.
Hello.
Let me put on I got to hear you.
Oh, yeah. Please do hear me.
Laura Kohn is the director of early workforce development at the San Diego Workforce Partnership. And she's my go-to expert on all things schools and childcare. She's been doing tons of research before this all happened about the crisis in childcare. And now the entire infrastructure of childcare has vanished. And I assume we can get it back. What do we know right now about how many people in San Diego County, Laura, need childcare?
Well, you know what? It's really hard to know right now how many people in San Diego County need childcare because of the layoffs. And so the estimates that we had before said that we were about 190,000 childcare slots short of what we needed. But I can't tell you at this point what we're short of. I will say, though, that the childcare sector is not shut down. So near as we can tell, about half of the childcare centers, the sort of the larger places, are still functioning, and 97% of the family childcare homes are open for business. But they all have reduced enrollment right now. Whether they're open or they're closed, they're teetering on the edge of insolvency, and really can't figure out how they'll keep operating in the kinds of conditions and constraints that people are talking about or that are in place right now for childcare. So fewer kids per room, less shuffling between rooms means that they have to staff up at higher levels. They have to clean more. They have health protections in place. And it's all way more expensive than the prior operating model. And they were already operating on the thinnest of margins before. So it's a big crisis.
My understanding is the governor has said that child care facilities can open right now for non-essential needs. Like we can
That's
have
right.
child care. Okay.
Yeah.
But one of the problems is that child care professionals often get paid very little. And if they were on unemployment after this crisis was launched, sorry, after this crisis began, if they got on unemployment, they may not be very excited about going back to a job that paid less than unemployment, where they might be in danger of catching a virus. What do we understand right now about that dynamic?
Yeah, two big concerns about the possibility of providing more childcare. Yeah, so one of them is what you just described. The ones that are the workers who are laid off now are being paid unemployment plus that federal bump, and they're making more money than they were making when they were working in childcare. And the second one is that a good chunk of the childcare workers, and I don't know the precise number, but the providers in town tell me it's a good number, are over 65, or are at greater risk of COVID infection or of severe consequences of COVID infection. And so they may not want to come back. We may not, think it's a good idea to encourage them to come back. So staffing up is really a big worry, a huge worry right now.
Am I right to be freaked out about schools right now?
Yes, you should be freaked out. I am too, because it's not figured out. Obviously there are no easy answers. There's not much guidance coming down from CDE. Every district appears to be figuring it out for themselves. They're talking to one another and talking things over, but there's no obvious model for how to run schools in this context. So the one thing I can say that is encouraging is that we've got countries in Europe that have opened their schools already, and Asia as well. And so by being behind them in the COVID crisis curve, we're going to be able to watch what happens, how they approach it, but also whether infection nodes come out of the reopening of those schools.
Well, one thing American educational leaders are very good at is taking lessons from overseas, right?
Not, yeah.
No, I kid the leaders. They're doing a lot of work, but I think that one of the things I'm trying to understand is, do you think that we're going to try to make the best of social distancing and distance learning, or do you think we're going to just hold off until it's okay to go back to school with minor modifications? I feel like there's two competing groups of people. There's one that says this is a lost time, cut it off, make up the time in the future with summer school or longer hours or longer years, forget about it. And then there's another group that's saying, no, enhance this distance learning. We don't know when this is ever going to get over. We need to make sure that people can learn now. And are those truly two competing camps, or is there margins on both?
I'm not hearing it as competing camps. I'm hearing it as scenario planning. Yeah, I think that the districts that I've talked to are planning to open in the fall, considering how they can start to do staged opening or experimenting with things in the summer, but planning to open in the fall in the adapted versions or scenarios that we could talk about. But if COVID got worse over the summer, or if there were some evidence from those other countries that reopening, even in adapted circumstances, was causing explosions in the virus, then they would have to go to the other version of trying to make do with distance learning. But in the meantime, kids are losing learning, like, for real. And whether it's, kids of privilege, parents tell me they feel like their kids are at best frozen in their learning time. But kids from more challenged circumstances where parents are still working, where their learning conditions are way less than ideal, they're undoubtedly losing ground. That's what happens every summer. We used to call it the summer slide, and this is going to be a massive COVID slide. So the urgency to shore up learning for those kids and try to do some adapted version of schooling for all of us and for the working parents is super high.
Let me ask you this. Let me put out two facts and see if you agree, or two strong opinions laced with facts.
All right.
See if you agree. One, distance learning, this idea of there being a hub of communication that helps parents facilitate the teaching of their kids with all these technological platforms, is a nightmare for working parents. True or false?
It's totally true. I mean, I haven't heard anything different from anyone, whether you're a parent who has the luck to be able to work from home, being a work from home worker and being a teacher and taking care of your house, et cetera. It's too much. And it is a nightmare. If you're still working outside the home, then nightmare also, because you're not there to help your kid and they're struggling along or not. And if you're unemployed, then you're really, on Maslow's hierarchy, you're really worried about your survival, and the likelihood that you're able to be the best teacher to your kids while you're also trying to be the best parent and make ends meet is not so high. I know there's some parents that are rising to this occasion, and it's working out for them, but I think we can agree that it's in the way minority.
So the second part of this fact-laced opinion is this question of, I don't think, it seems impossible. It is impossible to socially distance 6 feet apart in schools, kids who are 6 to 15 years old. I cannot picture any school setting where you could manage to keep people apart. I look at our school, and it's an old school, so maybe it's not designed in the same way, but there is no part of that school inside where those kids could separate. The school rooms are small. There's choke points all over the place. The idea that you would have any any significant number of students there and socially and keep them 6 feet apart is absurd to me. I am so tired of hearing people say that, because it seems like they don't even have never been to one of these types of schools.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Could you imagine having kids
Well,
separated in a school like that?
my imagination was aided by going to visit Kohn Valley School District's newly reopened childcare program a couple weeks ago. So it's been going now that was during its first week. It's been going now. It's in its third week. And they had it for those kids, which is a small number, but still seeing it as an experiment. The kids were pretty compliant with staying apart from one another. They weren't doing any group projects. All the stuff you did was on your own. They weren't sharing any equipment, including jump ropes. Everybody had their own jump rope. So I think there are ways that you can increase the distance between the kids, beyond what's normal by a significant amount, but it only will work if we stretch out the day. So there's just no way to do social distancing on our campuses unless you have kids in shifts, basically. That's the only possibility, whether it's certain days or parts of days. Otherwise, it definitely won't work. And I'll just add that California has really high class sizes relative to other places in the country. And so the challenge for us, because we've been tolerating these high class sizes for all this time, is going to be higher than it is for other schools.
Yeah. I mean, what you're saying is like you would basically make class sizes a third or a half of what they are.
Right.
And that's, I mean, that's not going to happen. Right. I mean, there's no way.
My teacher, Aunt, and she had it all figured out in her mind. There's going to be a morning shift and an afternoon shift. Teachers would take their planning time in the middle when kids are eating lunch. So your school day would be half as long.
Okay.
But you would see half the kids, and you would just repeat the curriculum morning and afternoon. Other school districts probably can probably conceive of a more nuanced, sophisticated approach where kids come on for certain things and off for others. It's going to be a really complicated dance is what it comes down to. And that's without touching the need for working parents to be at work.
Counterpoint. What if we just go back to school? Like should we not just wait until it's okay to be together? And are we concluding though that that's just too long? But let me.
Yes, we're concluding that that's too long. I'm married to a guy working on a COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
He has. He's very cautious about the timing until a vaccine is available, unless we get really lucky with the first ones out of the chute. But
so it would be. Do you think it's accepted as consensus that there is no normal school until there's a vaccine,
or a very successful treatment? Correct.
And that's the consensus, not just that. You think that's what the administrators are operating off of?
Absolutely.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's a gut punch.
The only other unless I can add is there's some question about how effective or ineffective kids are at transmitting the virus.
Exactly. Like, can we get to that's what you're talking about. Europe, there's a lot of like Denmark and other places that are figuring out or saying the kids are so unsusceptible to or whatever. They're not vulnerable to this to the point that they can be. And
evidence at this point really mixed. I've looked really carefully at it because it's a crux question, and it's not conclusive. So it's good. Again, it's good for us that other people are trying. I will say though, towards the optimistic side, that as I said, there is still childcare operating in San Diego County, and has been throughout the pandemic or the epidemic. And I'm not aware of any COVID nodes emanating out of any of those child care centers. So that's promising.
Exactly. So, all right. If you have questions out there about how schools will look at child care, send them right there. We see them come up and we can follow your questions. We'll get them up there. We can display them too if they're super well put. Let me draw out a nightmare for you, or a nightmare to some people.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that the decision is like San Diego State, that schools will not start on in live settings in the fall. That they make a decision, that San Diego Unified and LA and the state decide, hey, we're not going back to campuses in the fall. We're going to do this distance learning. And let's say that there's a lot of parents who've had a horrific time managing that over the last couple of months. Look at that announcement and say, well, I'm going to go look at some of these online charter schools or homeschool platforms that have already been established. They've been working on this problem for a long time, and they at least know, in some cases, how to manage the internet better than what we've experienced so far. I'm going to go to them. So we have this situation. Cindy Martin, the superintendent of the San Diego Unified School District, and Austin Buettner, the superintendent of the LA Unified, two biggest school districts in the state, wrote in Cal Matters yesterday. We can post the link. They said this is the worst financial crisis or worst crisis in the history of California schools. And so they say that we can't do everything we're supposed to do to get ready for this year with a 20% cut or whatever they're looking at in financing for this situation. And we have to do more with less. Basically, they're saying we have this giant deficit, and we're gonna have to do smaller class sizes, some distancing, whatever. We're gonna have to do some sort of device. And then what if you add to it 10, 15, 20%, 30% of other kids whose parents decide, actually, we're gonna go to this charter school, or we're gonna go to this home school platform? What if that happens? I mean, are we going to start to see a dissolution of the school system unlike we've ever seen?
I mean, that sounds like a realistic scenario to me. Parents will do what's best for their kids and for themselves, as long as they have those choices available to them. And as you know, and hopefully the listeners know, the money follows the student.
Exactly.
Suppose the state could protect. They could. I mean, I know money's scarce, but they could decide to backstop the enrollment of the school districts. They could freeze it at the 1920 levels and protect them against that kind of exodus. But that's just more. That's more money. That's taking a chunk of money that needs to be spent somewhere in the COVID crisis and putting it there. But it would stave off the dissolution of the school districts as your nightmare scenario.
So. I mean, if you were a parent, like we're, and we do get that announcement that says, at least for September through January, we're not going to do classes. You're not going to come on campus. You're going to have to continue this distance learning.
Yeah. Everybody understands this is a what if.
This is a what if. This is not. By the way, that's a problem right now. You have Gavin Newsom saying like, hey, we're going to open schools in July or something. And everybody freaks out. It was an offhand comment. And you have that lady, the public health officer in LA saying, we're not going to get out of the stay at home thing for 3 months. Turns into this national news, CNN, everything. It's like, whoa. Stop with the offhand comments, powerful people. Stop with the offhand comments, especially
there's
the president.
ambiguity about whose decision it is. There's absolutely ambiguity about that, and that's what's fueling this confusion. But okay. So if we do have to confront a distance learning scenario in the fall, which is hypothetical right now, how would you advise parents to start to decide whether they can handle it and how to manage it? And should they be thinking about, these homeschool platforms or these other more developed online educational systems? I mean, parents don't know what their own work situation is going to be in September. It's really hard to game these things out because of all the different variables. So one of them is what your own situation will be. Will you be going to the office in the fall? Will you be welcome?
Not if my kids are home,
but not required to go to the office. Will you still have a job when September comes? And then the other thing that parents will want to be calculating is there's, as I was mentioning before, there's big variation amongst school districts in the level of sophistication of their distance learning approaches. There's variation between schools, among schools within school districts, and there's variation from teacher to teacher to teacher. So who your child is assigned to for next year and that teacher's skill level, and of course they don't tell you that till the day before but that teacher's skill level at managing learning and supporting learning in a distance way is another factor that parents would want to look at. I know, some parents are planet headers and will get out in front of that, I suppose. We'll decide no matter what the form of the 2021 school year is, I think I'll be better off in this homeschool environment or this charter that's better at it. That's definitely possible. But
what would you need to see to be able to say it's okay to go back to school? Like, and what could you do to make? I had this idea that I've been trying to shop, which is like the only place in my school that I can picture people separating well is outside. Like maybe we just put everybody outside, summer camps outside, everything outside. Is there anything you could do to a school or to the way things work that would make people feel more comfortable about it? Like, what data point would you need to see to be able to say, hey, kids aren't really not only a threat to themselves, but a threat to people they might encounter? What would you need to see to be able to communicate that effectively to people?
So we would need, if we could get evidence that kids were slow transmitters or low transmitters, that would be helpful. If we could see some specific scenarios about how to increase the distance amongst kids, recognizing that it will be imperfect per the comments in the chat. And I think we will be able to get evidence of that. If we could see specific plans from the school districts about how they'll do this blended situation and collaboration between the school districts and the after-school providers so that they can stitch together a full day experience for kids and families. Those would be some of the conditions I would look at. And then just generally, what's going on with COVID? Are we sloping down or have we peaked back up? And there will be shutdowns. So even if we do figure out a scenario and I hope we will, for reopening schools in the fall, if the epidemic picks up in hot spots, we have to be ready for things to shut down quickly. What we want to see is that a COVID node in one school doesn't necessitate the shutting down of all schools in a district or in the county. We'd like, through testing, tracing, and tracking, to be able to isolate any kind of transmission nodes that crop up in schools and shut down that school and protect that community without doing a widespread shutdown.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because one thing about schools is kids get sick all the time, like constantly. Like I was sick I'm still sick all the time. I mean, not now, I guess maybe we should just do this, but sick all the time. And it's going to be terrible when a normal flu or anything breaks out in a school and you have to, it's like our entire view of sickness has been just jostled to the point where like we can't handle anything anymore. It doesn't seem like we're gonna have to, like, if somebody gets sick at a school, how do you keep it from getting shut down?
Because, there's going to be rapid testing by the fall. It's going to be saliva testing instead of a nasty swab up your nose.
Okay.
So that kids will be willing to do it. Yeah, the rapid testing is what fixes that problem. There's a problem we can fix.
Does your husband need any help? Should I send some Snickers? He's coming up with a vaccine. Should we send him any help?
The good news is that Scripps Research is allowing somewhat more intensity of work in the lab starting this week. So he's able to work a little bit faster and just keep hoping for that.
All right. We did have a question come in. I don't know that either of us can answer this, but do you think there will be enough government assistance, rent relief, mortgage relief, and debt relief for before our economy collapses? No, I don't foresee them doing. There's a lot of pleas among the school districts asking for state help, and the state is just asked for $2 trillion to support a group of states that they represented. Maybe some of that will come, but it doesn't seem. There's a lot of hostility to it in the Senate, the conservatives and others, and so I don't know that that's coming anytime soon. Have you guys, you deal with federal funding sometime? Have you guys seen any indication that there's more support coming for families or for local governments or anything?
No, we see what see that the House put out a proposal yesterday, which includes funding for helping people get back to work who've been laid off. But it was a House proposal, and we're as pessimistic as everyone else is about whether the Senate will pick it up.
Yeah. Well, before I let you go, you did a bunch of research before the crisis about the childcare situation, and a lot of the language in there said, like, even with a booming economy, and now that's changed a lot. What was the situation before the crisis as far as people needing childcare who couldn't connect with it?
Yeah. So this report is available at childcare.workforce.org. And although it is contextualized in our booming pre-COVID economy, the basic points that it's making are totally coming home to roost in the COVID context. So we found even at that time that childcare in San Diego County was scarce, inconvenient, expensive, and of really varying quality. And the fragility of that system is totally laid bare right now. But the other thing that's very much elevated, that was one of the main points we were making, is that our childcare system, such as it is an intimate part of our economy. And when it's fragile, that means our economy can't thrive. And that's what we're able to recognize right now, that childcare and the care of our kids is what enables our economy to function, because a huge chunk of our most productive workers are parents of young children, and they have to have childcare in order to work.
Yeah, it really drove me nuts when I started talking about this, when people say, well, that's separate from the discussion we're having about our businesses and their businesses opening. No. Having access to childcare is not separate. And not just for people directly involved with it. It is part of the entire infrastructure. It's like saying roads are separate. Roads aren't separate. They're dealt with by different people, but they're intimately involved in the functioning of our economy.
But we've gotten in a really bad habit here in San Diego in particular of letting someone else deal with childcare, and that someone else being the state and the feds, we think. But they haven't done a very good job of dealing with it. And we haven't done a very good job of both doing what we can here locally to shore it up, but also advocating to the state and federal government about how critical it is for our economy. So I think we're woken up now.
Yeah.
Last week, the county decided to invest the first dollars out of its local CARES Act funding for essential worker childcare vouchers, and they challenged the city to match it. And the mayor held a press conference with Councilmember Chris Cate and Supervisor Nathan Fletcher on Friday, saying that they intended to move forward with meeting that match. So this is the first local funding. It's federal funding, but with local discretion that anyone can remember being allocated in San Diego County. So we're awake now, and we're ready to see what we can do to support it.
All right. What was your website for childcare again?
Childcare.workforce.org.
Laura Kohn, you can see why I wanted to have her to talk about this. We'll bring her on as we see developments come on. She's been a close friend of mine for some time. We got to do our schools guide this year. At first, I thought, oh no, what are we going to do about a schools guide? They're not producing the dashboard in the same way it looks like. But then I realized we do a parent's guide to public schools every year, and I realized that might be more valuable than ever this year. Could quite possibly be the most important publication. So thank you so much for joining, and good luck, and wish your husband good luck. We send him our collective hopes and dreams.
Thank you.
All right. I want to take your questions all. Thank you, Laura. And let's hear, do you still have any questions, any hopes, any ideas about what we should be dealing with? I saw a couple come through. I will pull them up. How many ballot measures will the state and local governments put on the November ballot that call for tax or fee increases? Well, they decided not to put on the ballot the Elevate SD plan. That was the effort to raise taxes for the Metropolitan Transit System, whose, by the way, the digression, Paul Jablonski, the CEO of the Metropolitan Transit System, died abruptly this weekend. And that was kind of a shock to the system. Rest in peace, Paul. He was well respected on all sides. But MTS was going to use the money to increase frequency of bus and trolley and provide some funding for some expansion of the service. That is not happening. We are still waiting to see what might happen with the effort to raise property taxes so that we can expand the affordable housing situation, affordable housing stock within the city of San Diego. That has not been determined yet whether that would go forward. The state, from what I understand, or statewide groups that want to change the property tax system. Prop 13 right now puts a ceiling on property taxes across the state for commercial properties and for your home and private property. And so they want to take that and split it so that commercial properties can be inflated so that they can pay, according to the value of their property, pay more taxes. And that, I think, will still go forward. That's still happening. There's a question, I think, about some of the signature gathering efforts, whether that's still happening. I don't know about others right now. We will see how much of those happen. But the city council today is discussing about a dozen ballot measures, everything from ranked choice voting to a proposal to change the city attorney's role in the city government, and to do a lot of different things. There's another one that's really interesting to me that I can't remember right now. But yes, a lot of ballot measures still to come. All right, what questions do you have before I go? No new property tax. Well, remember, that's for commercial properties. So not to say it's not a big deal for them. It is, and they will probably mount a vigorous opposition to it, but I think it will be on there. Do we have any idea what age the slower spreading effect of the COVID? No idea. I will try to put that in the list of things we can figure out. All right. One last thing I wanted to share for today. We have a great program. Hold up. We have a great program coming up tonight. Let's pull this up. Sorry, I just want to make sure I do this the right way. Share screen. All right, this is a town hall we're running tonight at 5 p.m. Kayla Jimenez, Ashley McGlone, reporters have done investigative work about schools and school systems, and with regard to abuse that occurs sometimes between educators and employees in systems, and the difficulty it was for victims to get the support and sometimes the justice they deserved. And now, a lot of that discussion was about internet communications between teachers and students, for example, and how fraught and ill-defined that world was. And now that's education is online. And so we wanted to have a discussion about how that should work, how that is working as we go through a new process of connecting people online mostly. And so that will be tonight at 5 p.m. on this channel, on Facebook and YouTube. And so check that out. 5 p.m. Ashley McGlone and Kayla Jimenez tonight. I want to thank Laura Kohn again for coming aboard. She was fantastic. If you have any questions about the schools, about San Diego, we have investigative journalists out there every single day working hard to make sure that you can get that information, to get the explanatory journalism you want and need, and to get the investigative journalism that helps keep people accountable. We find out we make sense of what people are saying out there, and we find out what they don't want to say. We have a ton of journalists out there doing that every single day. And if you want to be a part of the system that helps make that possible, go to VOSD.org/give. And thank you to all our support. And I want to shout out to Megan Wood, who's helped me so much to put this show together. And it's been a lot of fun. If you would enjoy it, let us know, and we will keep doing it. Thank you so much for your support. And go to voiceofsandiego.org to follow all the stuff that we do every single day. Thank you so much.